Gimel. If residents of a courtyard, one of whom forgot to participate in the Eruv, his house is restricted with regard to carrying in and carrying out to him and to them. But theirs are permitted to him and to them. If they cede their rights to him, he is permitted. But if they are restricted, they are restricted. If there were two, they restrict each other because an individual cannot cede rights and acquire rights. Two can cede rights but cannot acquire rights. When may rights be ceded? Beis Shammai says while it is yet day, but Beis Hillel says when it is dark. One who ceded his rights then carried out, whether unintentionally or deliberately, restricts. These are the words of Rameya. Rabbi Yehuda says deliberately he restricts, unintentionally he does not restrict. If a house owner was a partner with neighbors with this one in wine and that one in wine, they need not make an error. With this one in wine and with that one in oil, they must make an error. So Rabbi Shimon says in either case, they need not make an error. Okay.
Okay. Chamesh chavuros sheshavsu b'traklin echad. Okay, now to set the stage for this Mishnah, what we've got over here is a bunch of families rented out a hall for Shabbos. Okay, but there are no bedrooms in this hall. All that they did was they went and they stuck up a bunch of curtains. They stuck up some partitions, little mechitzas all around. Each family got their little mechitzas, the kind that you'd use in the Abba Zion hall. Right? So they get a little bit of privacy, but nonetheless they're all under one roof. But each family is dwelling in its own little partition. Now our question is about the courtyard outside the hall. Okay, in the courtyard outside the hall, there's that one is shared with other residents who've got houses adjacent to the hall. Okay, so now the question that we're going to be dealing with over here is who has to participate in an Erev Chatzeros to allow people to carry into that Chatzer from the hall and from the other houses around the Chatzer. All right. So there are five. So let's say five is just an arbitrary number, just to say many. Okay, that who are spending Shabbos in this hall. Beis Shammai omrim erov lechol chavura v'chavura. Every one of them, every one of these five families is considered a resident of an independent resident, and that goes out to the courtyard, and therefore every one of them must participate in the Erev Chatzeros. Beis Hillel omrim erev echad lechulan. They're all considered like one residence. They're all living in one residence, and therefore you only need to contribute for one Erev for the whole house. Okay. Umodim, they nevertheless concede. Bisman shemiktasan shiruyin b'chadarim or ba'alios. Now, what happens if that hall has got real rooms that go walls from floor to ceiling, or they're in an attic that's in a separate place inside that traklin? Now they've rented out a separate rishus inside that house, and that's really a separate rishus, not just. Uh, Okay, and then they say, okay, fine. When that's the case, when they're renting actual rooms inside the track-in, shehen tzrichin erev l'chol chavura v'chavura, then every group has to contribute independently to the erev chatzeres. So it looks like the point of departure between Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai is they all agree that if you're in a separate rishus, if everyone's renting their own separate rishus, then they must all contribute. And Beis Shammai says, well, actually, the mechitzas are good enough to make a separate rishus. And Beis Hillel is saying, no, they're not a separate rishus. They're all under one ceiling inside the hall. So they've just got a bunch of partitions in between them. Okay, and that's Mishnah Vav. Mishnah Zayin. Ha'achin hashutafin. Okay, so you've got a family dwelling basically. Well, not exactly more than a family dwelling. You've got a family that has a couple of houses around the Chatzer. So, a couple of brothers got married and they bought up properties next to their parents' house around the same Chatzer. Now, there are other residents around the Chatzer. That's an important part of the setup over here. And what's more is that these brothers are still, they're in kollel or whatever, and they're still getting their money from daddy. So comes Shabbos, and they come and eat at daddy's table, and then they go home. So what do we got over here? Ha'achin ha'shetafin shehayu ochlin al shulchan avihim. So they're busy they eat at their dad's table, but they go back to her, but they go home to sleep. Okay. Tzrichin eruv l'chol echad ve'echad. They nonetheless need to contribute towards the general Erev Chatzeros, even though they're not they're eating at their dad's table. Nonetheless, they are independent residents of the Chatzer and must all contribute towards the Erev Chatzeros. Okay. Lefichach im shachach echad mehem. So if one of them forgot, obviously, below erev mevatel es so he has to give up his right in the chatzer for everyone else to be allowed to carry there. We learned that yesterday. Yeah. But when is this? So bisman shemolichin eruvan b'makom acher. This is when the eruv foods are being stored in a third party's house, and somebody who's not part of the family. Okay, aval im haya eruv ba etlan. If the eruv is being stored in daddy's house, that makes daddy's house the most important house in the chatzer. Or she'ein imahen diurin bechatzer, or if there are no other residents in the chatzer, einan tzrichin la'arev, then they actually don't even need to they don't need to participate in the Eruv at all. In the case of the other residents, when there are other residents, the brothers are considered that they've already been mevatel their rishus to their father who's holding the Eruv foods, and therefore they don't need to participate in the Eruv. And even more so when there are no other residents, then daddy basically owns the entire chatzer, including their houses, because the food, basically the food, you could understand it like this, that the food that they're going to eat in their dad's house is the eruv, and it's there for them.
Right.
Therefore, they're automatically included. The food when the food is in somebody, I think that must be the explanation. When the food's in somebody else's house, then okay, then they've got to contribute. When the food's in daddy's house, when the area food is in daddy's house, they don't need to contribute because there's lots of food in daddy's house that they're going to come and eat, and therefore they're automatically included in the Eruv.
Yeah.
Okay. Chamesh chatzeros pesuchos zo pesuchos lemavoy. Okay, so what you have is like a cul-de-sac in the street, okay, surrounded by a bunch of cluster houses.
Okay.
Okay, so you've got a bunch of driveways going into you've got five driveways going off the Mavoy, and off each of these driveways are five little cluster houses around the driveway. Okay, and that driveway we'll call the Chatzer. And that's so each Chatzer is shared between the five houses around it, and the five Chatzeros all lead into the Mavoy.
So the five houses are all connected to one driveway, and the next five houses to another driveway.
That's correct.
Okay.
And the five driveways all come out from the Mavoy. So you've got sort of this fractal pattern where where you've got right, it's a five and five. Okay. Um, all right. So now this is actually a great Mishnah demonstrating demonstrating in practice what's a chatzer and what's a mavoy and what's the difference between them. Okay. Ervu bechatzeros velo nishtatfu b'mavoy. Okay, so what happens if all of the residents? Well, yeah, okay. All of the residents around the chatzeros made their little chaburas themselves, and they all made an erev chatzeros around their driveway. Okay.
Right.
But nobody made any sort of shituf in the mavoy in the alley. Then obviously the halacha is mutarin b'chatzer. So then they're allowed to carry into the chatzer, but they're not allowed to carry into the mavoy. Okay. Ve'im nishtatfu b'mavoy. What happens, however, if they made the shituf, if all of the residents, or all 25 residents around the Mavoy didn't bother making an area of Chatzeros, but they did make a shituf Mavos. They put food in one place to cut off the alleyway. Then what happens is that includes all of the Chatzeros.
Okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, maybe I misunderstood this because Kahati is saying, Klomar im gam nishtatfu b'mavoy, mutarin kan v'kan. If they also did the mavoy, um, why would you even say that? Because that should be obvious. I would have thought of the greater chiddush is that the mavoi includes the chatzeros, but maybe I'm wrong. Hold on. Mishnah tena ba lashmiya she'afilu ba lo erivu hachatzeros. Yeah, okay. So what they're saying is that um what they're saying is that the chiddush is this, that they made all of the five different driveways, the five different clusters made an Erev Chatzeros just internally, and then they made the sheet of Mavos, okay, which they joined together for the alleyway. Now, not
Right.
only are they permitted to carry from the Chatzer into the Mavoi, but they're also permitted to carry between all the Chatzeros. So so that you don't have
They're
to
all
go through the
connected.
Mavoy
Right.
to get into the other Chatzar. It automatically includes the
Well,
the carrying in between the different the different Chatzeros, the different courtyards, driveways, as we're calling
says
them.
they carry from their houses into the courtyards and from their courtyards into the alley.
Right, correct.
Right.
Okay, what time of Chatzar? Okay. Erevu b'Chatzeros. Okay, what happens if they made the Erev in the Chatzer and they made a Shituf in the Mavoy? V'shachach echad mibnei Chatzer v'lo Erev. But one guy did not participate. Forgot. Not that it's not that he wanted to be obstructive or anything like that, because if he had negative intentions, that's worse. He just never forgot. Um, Mutarin kan v'kan. If he forgot to participate in his little bit of the Eruv, we don't even need him to be mevater on his space because the Eruv, the sheet of Mavos, starts incorporating everything. Let me just see that I've read that correctly. Mutarin b'chateres. Mutarin kan v'kan. He forgot with the right. So he forgot to make the Erev with his direct neighbors around the Chatzar, but he did participate in the sheet of Mavos. So then, because we're going to the reason why they didn't want people to forget about they wanted you to have both the Erev Chatzeros and the sheet of Mavos is so that the people shouldn't forget the halachas of Erev Chatzeros. Um, but in this particular case, where you've got a sheet of Mavos already, and his neighbors are participating, שמה שאמרו חכמים שצריכים גם ערב וגם שיתוף, אין סומכים על השיתוף במקום ערב. The reason is so that people shouldn't forget the Torah of Erev, that the children shouldn't forget. Okay, but this
What's
is only when there's no Erev at all. But since the Shituf Mavos already includes the whole area, we're not going to be machmir on him.
So it says if he didn't participate in the shituf, but they permitted in the courtyards, but prohibited in the alley. For an alley is a courtyard, there's a courtyard to the houses.
You're a phrase too far ahead. We're talking about
Oh, I'm
where one
sorry.
forgot, where one of the Bnei Chatzir forgot and didn't make an Erev, mutarin kan v'kan. They're permitted both here and there. Okay,
Okay.
mibnei mavoi. Now, what happens if one person forgot to participate in the mavoi in the alleyway? V'lo nishtatef. Mutarin b'chatzeros v'asorin b'mavoi. So you still can carry inside the chatzeros because you didn't obstruct anything there. But the mavoi is a problem because the larger one, right? And what's the logic of that? Mavoi lechatzeros kechatzer lebatim. This is exactly the symmetry I was trying to allude to earlier, is that um, the relationship of Mavoi to Chatzer is the same as the relationship as Chatzer to houses.
Okay.
Somebody from
All right.
the so if somebody so then you can just substitute all the halachas that if one of the Chatzeros forgot to participate in the Mavoi, then they have to be mavater on their rights in the Mavoi for everyone else to be able to carry in the Mavoi. So you just substitute like that. Okay, we are
Okay.
we are done.
Dollar base. Dollar base. Once they did not enter the harbor until night had fallen, and they asked Rabbi Gamliel, "May we disembark?" And he answered them, "You are permitted, for I had observing, and we are within the Tchum before dark." If one left with permission, and they said to him, "The act has already been done," he has 2,000 cubits in every direction. If he was within the Tchum, it is as if he did not leave, and all those leaving to save people may return to their places. One who sat down while on a journey and then stood up and saw that he was near a city, since it had not been his intention, he may not enter. And these are the words of Rav Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says he may enter. Rabbi Yehuda said it once happened that Rabbi Tarfon entered without intent. Okay. Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Good base above. One who writes two letters in a period of forgetfulness, one in the morning and one in the afternoon, Rabbi Gamliel holds him liable, but the sages exempt him. Rabbi Eliezer says one who weaves three threads at the beginning or adds one thread to woven fabric is liable, but the comments say whether it is at the beginning or at the end, its amount is two threads. One who sets two heddles on a home loom or on a commercial loom, and one who positions the warp reeds of sifter or sieve or a basket is liable. And one who sews two stitches and one who tears in order to sew two stitches is liable.
Okay. Next.
Okay. Beis Zion. One who hires a laborer to lay out figs, and he said to him, excuse me, on condition that I may eat figs, he may eat and is exempt. On condition that I and my son, alternately my household may eat, or that my son may eat the equivalent of my wage, he may eat and is exempt. But if his son eats, he is liable. On condition that I may eat during the operation, and after the operation, he may eat during the operation and is exempt. Excuse me. But if he eats after the operation, he is liable, since he is not entitled to eat thus by the Torah. This is the general rule. He who is entitled to eat by the Torah is exempt, but he who is not entitled to eat by the Torah is liable. If one was working with inferior figs, he may not eat superior figs. With superior figs, he might not eat inferior figs, but he may refrain until he reaches the side of the choice fruit and then eat. If one exchanges with his fellow, one to eat and the other to eat, one to lay out and the other to lay out, one to eat and the other to lay out, he is liable. And Rabbi Yehuda says, he who exchanges to eat is liable, to lay out, he is exempt. If one was taking figs through the courtyard to lay them out, his children and his household may eat and are exempt. And the laborers who work with him, if they are not entitled to maintenance from him, they may eat and are exempt. But if they are entitled to maintenance from him, they may not eat.
Okay.
Migvos. Okay, Tesvav. When found on garments, if only once on one side it does not intervene, but if on both sides it does intervene, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, even on one side it does intervene. Rabbi Yossi says on garments of Torah scholars it intervenes even on one side, but those on a bore it only intervenes when on both sides. On the apron of pitch workers or potters or tree branch pruners, it does not intervene. And Rabbi Yehuda says the same applies to the apron of fruit dryers. This is the general rule. Anything which one finds disturbing intervenes, and anyone which does not find disturbing does not intervene. And all handles of utensils are inserted that are inserted improperly, or they are inserted properly but were not finished, or that were finished but not became broken, those intervene. If a vessel was immersed by its mouth, with its mouth downwards, it is as though it was not immersed. If it was immersed the normal way, but without its appendage, it does not become tahor unless it is turned on its side. A vessel which is narrow at both ends and wide in the middle cannot become tahor unless it is turned on its side, and a bottle whose rim is turned downwards cannot become tahor unless it is pierced on its side. A layman's inkwell cannot become tahor unless it is pierced on its side. Yosef HaKohen inkwell was pierced on its side.
Okay.
Okay. Food. Okay. Ches hey. The rennet of an animal slaughtered by a Gentile, which is nevela, it is forbidden. If one curdles milk in a kosher more, if it has enough to part of flavor, then it's forbidden. If a kosher animal suckles from a treifa, its rennet is forbidden. If a treifa suckles from a kosher animal, its rennet is permissible because it is gathered inside. There is a stringency in chalev over blood, and there's a stringency in blood over chalev. The stringency in chalev is that one is guilty of me'ilah on its account, and one is liable on its account for pickle, left over, and tuma, which is not the case with the blood. The stringency of blood is that the prohibition of blood applies to domestic animals, beasts, and fowls, but non-kosher and kosher, whereas the prohibition of kalev applies only to kosher domestic animals. The hide, the gravy, the spices, the shreds, the bones, the gidden, the horns, and the hooves combine to convey the tumah of foods, but not the tumah of the velas. Similarly, if one slaughters a non-kosher animal for a Gentile and it still convulses, it conveys the tumah of foods, but not the tumah of the velas until it dies or it's chopped off its head. Scripture has provided for more things that convey tumah of foods than then that convey tuma of nevelos. Rabbi Yehuda says shreds that were gathered together, if their volume is of an olive in one place, it's liable on its account. Okay.
Hey,
So,
and
wow. So, okay. And we have Dalad Dalad. The wife of a Kohen may drink, and she is then permitted to return to her husband. The wife of a sterile man may drink. A warning can be issued even in respect to all those forbidden in marriage by reason of kinship, with the exception of a minor and one that is not human. The following are the women to whom the courts give warning: one whose husband has become a deaf mute or mentally incompetent or has been incarcerated in a prison. They did not say this in regard to giving her to drink, but only in regard to disqualifying her from receiving payments for a marriage contract. Rabbi Yossi says even in regard to giving her to drink, so that her husband comes out of prison and he will give her to drink. Just as the waters test us, all the waters test him, as it is stated, and they shall enter, and they shall enter. Just as she is prohibited to her husband, so she is prohibited to the adulterer. As it said, become defiled and be defiled. These are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shua says, so does Zechariah ben Hakatav expound. Rebbe says, the two mentions in the passage of his she had become defiled, he defiled, one is in regard to the husband, and the other in regard to the adulterer.
okay,
Okay.
and we're done. Thank you very
Well,
much.
all right, I got you on time. Okay. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Thank you.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Bye.